let's take some time now and focus on remoting into Windows 10. So one of the things that we definitely sometimes need to be able to do, and sometimes we even allow our users to do it, is this capability that allows them to remote into the desktop of their operating system. Okay, so Windows 10 has a feature we can utilize called the remote desktop feature. This is a feature that's got to be turned on. And the goal of the remote desktop feature is going to let you remote into your machine and use your machine when you're away from your machine. This is not really meant to be like a tech support help desk kind of thing. There's another thing called remote assistance and quick assist that'll let you do that. This is to let a user get into their machine when they're away if they need to and use their desktop remotely. Okay, so to do that, first thing you got to do is you have to actually turn it on. And to turn it on, we're going to go to Control Panel. Okay. So we'll open up Control Panel, and then we're going to go to System. So we'll open up System. We're going to click on Remote Settings, and then notice that it's turned off. We're going to turn this on. You also have a little feature called Allow Connections Only from Computers Running Windows Remote Desktop with NLA. Network level authentication allows a computer to have to authenticate before it can connect into another computer. This is a security feature that's going to improve your security. We didn't really have that back in the Windows 10, Windows XP days. We didn't have that little feature. Okay, so NLA is going to provide you with some more security, give you better security, and make it where computers have to authenticate before they can get in, and then the user would also have to put their password in. So unless you had a really old operating system that needed to get in, or some non-Windows supported thing that needed a remote in that didn't support NLA, then you would turn it off. But it's a good feature, so you don't want to turn it off. Now we also need to specify who we're going to let get in. So we're going to click Select Users. Windows has a group called the Remote Desktop Users Group. Anybody that's a member of that group has the authority to connect in. Right now the group is empty, so nobody can get in unless they're an admin. An administrator, such as my user account, which is instructor, this instructor user account being an admin, can get in. But if I wanted to allow a user like Jane Doe, who's not an admin, to get in, I could click Add, and I could add Jane Doe, and Jane Doe would now be able to get in. Okay, so this is how you turn it on. Now, remember, you've got remote assistance up here as well. Both technologies, remote assistance, remote desktop, use port 3389, which is the RDP. Protocol, remote desktop protocol, to do this. Okay, so you have to make sure your firewall is not blocking any of that and all that as well, so that the connections can be allowed in. You can check your firewall. Let me zoom out here. You can check your firewall as well by going into Control Panel, Windows Defender Firewall. Go here to allow an app or feature through the firewall, and then if you look closely on the list here, you'll see you have remote desktop. Let me just kind of scroll down, and you just want to make sure that that remote desktop is open on your firewall coming in if you're going to allow people to remote into it. Okay, you can choose what profile you want. I talked about all the profiles back in the firewall section of the course. Okay, so the next thing though would be just to illustrate real fast, I just want to mention the difference between remote desktop and remote assistance. Remote desktop is going to let somebody remote in, and when somebody remotes in, they will not be able to see the screen. If somebody was physically sitting at the computer when you remoted into it, it's going to lock the screen on them. They're not going to be able to see what you're doing. So if you're wanting to do like a help desk scenario or something, you would probably want to use remote assistance for that. Remote assistance will let you remote into somebody's screen, and then they can see what you're doing and move the mouse and all that. You can actually send what's called a remote assistance invitation if you want. You type remote assistance down here in the search bar. You can say invite someone to help you, and then it'll give you a file that you can email them and they can accept it. I'll tell you though, remote assistance is being deprecated. Microsoft now has added a feature called Quick Assist. And Quick Assist is a feature that kind of works like TeamViewer, if you've ever used that. With Quick Assist, I can actually, it'll authenticate to Microsoft servers. I have to have a Microsoft account, but it'll give me a code, and I could give that code to the person over the phone. They can type the code in, and they can get into the machine, as long as you accept their connection. So the great thing about this, though, is I don't have to open up any special ports on my firewall to support this. it all does things dynamically with what are known as outbound ports using dynamic inbound ports. So it doesn't actually have to, you don't have to screw with your firewall a whole lot if you use this. And it's using Microsoft servers as a mediator between it. And it's free, it doesn't cost anything. You just have to have a Microsoft account, which is free. But again, that's in sort of a help desk scenario. If I'm wanting to get in as an administrator or just a person wanting to get into their desktop remotely, now that I've enabled it on this computer, I have to have a tool to get in. So I'm going to jump over now to my other computer. Okay, so here I am on a different computer, and I want to remote into that client. The client's name is NYC-CL1. So I'm going to click Start. I'm going to type the word remote into the search bar, and you'll see you have a tool called Remote Desktop Connection. So I'm going to click that tool. At that point, I'm going to type in the name of the computer I want to get into, NYC-CL1 or IP address or whatever, and I could connect. Now, you can also expand this out. You could save this as an icon on your desktop so you can get in all the time. Okay, you can alter your display settings to maybe get better bandwidth or change the color. Granted, the higher graphics you got, the slower the connection will be. And then you could do local resources. You could have sound play through your speakers or the speakers on the destination computer, keyboard shortcuts using on your computer or the destination computer. You can even print to a printer on the destination computer or copy and paste text. You've also got the Experience tab that lets you adjust some of the bandwidth options here based on how fast your internet connection is. It'll adjust your settings to give you better bandwidth. And then you've got Advanced. This will let you make the computer on the other end authenticate back to you or just warn you if it doesn't. And your company can also implement this thing called a Remote Desktop Gateway, which is a secured server that'll let you get into a bunch of computers internally if you want. That's more of a server thing. We don't really talk a lot about that here, but that's if you had a large amount of computers you needed people to be able to get into using remote desktop, you could implement something called a Remote Desktop Gateway. Okay, I'm just connecting into the one machine, so I'm going to put in that NYC-CL1, and I'm going to click Connect. Okay, at that point, it's going to let me put my password in. It's going to authenticate, and eventually it's going to pop up on my screen, and here I am, as you see, this little connection bar that's showing me who I'm connected to. If I wanted to minimize or disconnect, I could actually do that here. See, I can minimize this if I want. I'm back over here on my other computer. Maximize it. Okay, so here I am. I'm now remoted into that NYC-CL1, and I can do things as though I was physically sitting at that computer. Now, if we jump over to NYC-CL1, I want to show you something. Notice that it's no longer on the desktop anymore. The screen has been locked. Okay. Now, if I was to log back on to this computer right now, it's going to disconnect this guy right here. Okay, so if I do that right now, if I actually go and I put my password in, it's going to log this computer on again. It's going to disconnect this this other computer from being connected in. Okay, so this computer right here is going to get disconnected eventually. Okay, once all that that all gets fired up. Okay, so last thing I want to show you, just want to do a quick reminder. Another way we deal with remoting into computers is with PowerShell. Remember that we can remote into other computers by using commands like get service, all right, which I showed you. Let me up the font here. You can refer back to my PowerShell lesson if you want more details on this, but get service-computer name, and I can put in the computer name of something I want to remote into, like NYC-CL1. I also have that command called enter-ps session that lets me remote into computers as well, don't forget, which is really cool. Enter-ps session is kind of like telnet SSH. It'll let me remote into a computer as though I was physically sitting at that computer and run commands. Okay, so we've talked about that. If you want more information on that, refer back to my PowerShell lesson that I did earlier in the course. But hopefully that gives you guys a decent understanding of some of the different ways that we remote into computers and run commands or use the desktop when we're not there.